Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give just one more minute for folks to get into the webinar, and we'll get started here momentarily. All right, it's just after 3 p.m. Eastern time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everyone. I know a few folks will still be joining over the next couple minutes, but we're excited uh, to be joining you all this afternoon for this SBIR STTR webinar for the FY25 Phase 2. For many of you, you received perhaps a direct invite from our ConnectWorks team, and so we're happy to have you join us for today's session. A few of the key members that will be sharing their screens and speaking today, both from the DOE's Office of Technology Commercialization with Eileen, Ben, and Felipe, as well as on the ConnectWorks side, myself, Grace North serving as the program manager, and Kelsey Hamilton will be facilitating much of our Q&A session with OTC and others on the call as well. Just a couple housekeeping items for those of you joining us, recognizing some may have even joined us over the last couple weeks if there was any interest on the overall new announcement for phase 1. But if this is your first time, we just ask that you use the chat for specific questions pertaining to audio settings or difficulties you're having. We will not be monitoring that once we get past the first few minutes. As we just troubleshoot and make sure everything is good to go. So we will have a Q&A portion, and we'll go through instructions on that of how do you submit your questions once we reach that portion. So please, again, just use the chat feature for that and try to keep that clear for everyone. There will be a QR code once we reach that. We'll also post a link to the question segment, so you can either use that on your computer or your phone, whatever your preference may be once we reach that. And at the very end, there will be a very brief survey. We really appreciate the time you'll take to complete that. It just helps us better prepare, gain some valuable feedback from you all, and really ensure you're getting the correct information you need and that we're driving the right folks to these webinars. A little bit about who we are. So ConnectWorks, if you're not familiar, we are managed by Advanced Technology International, or ATI. We represent one of the three partnership intermediaries with the Department of Energy's OTC office, and we're excited to be involved in helping manage the application process, the overall intake for OTC with the SBIR program. Again, just a little bit about us, and then I'll turn it over to Ben to really kick us off. The mission for ConnectWorks, when you think of it, our role is to really match and collaborate with small businesses, academia, really pressing to meet the needs of OTC's challenges and across the divisions at DOE. And so some of the easy ways that you can stay connected with us is by joining our SBIR mailing list. I do recognize many of you on the call. We did direct outreach in late July to you all, but a great way, if you didn't already, just stay in contact with us by joining that mailing list. We'll keep it very specific to key updates, announcements, and that sort of thing. We also do have a standalone ConnectWorks page and social media account with LinkedIn, so please encourage you to follow us over there as well. A little bit different on ConnectWorks is there's a network form. There's no cost to join, but it just allows you to hear about upcoming opportunities we have with ConnectWorks as well, not just SBIR. You'll see an email address here, SBIR-STTR at ConnectWorks. That is the best way to stay in contact with us. We will not be supplying direct DOE contacts. I know many of you have worked prior with some of the PMs and others, but we just ask that all questions be fielded through us, and that way we can help support you all and ensure timely responses. And as I mentioned, as ATI's overall is our overall organization. A division of ATI is Tech Connect. Some of you may have joined or heard of some of the Tech Connect series. There will be a fall SBIR Innovation Conference at the Gaylord here in the DC area. And so we'll be in booth 615. We'd love to see you and stop by. We'll be joined alongside OTC and some other PIs as well. So there will be a separate SBIR pavilion with all the federal agencies there as well. So definitely stop by if you're in town or interested in joining. And if not, check out Tech Connect for future events, as they often have in the spring and the fall as well. So with that, I will conclude and turn it over to Ben to kick us off. Thanks, Ben.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Grace, and thanks to the whole team. And it's great to see everyone on here today. We're looking forward to diving in. My name is Ben Schrager. I'm a program manager with DOE's Office of Technology Commercialization. I am not to be confused with Ben Schrag, who works for NSF on the SBIR team there. We are two different people, but we have met. So the Bens have joined forces at times. I'm going to give an overview of our phase 2 opportunity, eligibility requirements, and evaluation before kicking it over to a few other speakers, and we'll have plenty of time for questions. So really looking forward to getting to talk through the program. So for those who've heard us speak in some session before, you might be aware of the program restructuring going on at DOE. And I apologize if this is repeat information, but I think it is really, really good to talk through because we have undergone a lot of changes in the SBIR STTR program at DOE in the last year or so. Previously, as you know, being our awardees, the program here was managed and administered by the Office of Science, the DOE's Office of Science. You applied for FAR-based cooperative agreements or grants, and there were a number of different details that went along with the type of grant structure that our old awards were. We have now transitioned to the program being managed by the Office of Technology Commercialization, or OTC, and administered by ConnectWorks. And that's Grayson and the incredible team from ConnectWorks that's on the panel today and that you probably visited the website of already. These new agreements are not FAR-based agreements. They're milestone-based payments, but they still, in many ways, act the same. You're still applying for SBIR funds to do some kind of innovative project. Also in the last year, we saw the reauthorization of the SBIR program after a 6-month lapse. And with this new reauthorization came a new focus on commercialization and market offtake. So now, as we're restructuring the program within OTC with these new priorities in mind, we are very excited to get to launch some of the new parts of this program, starting with this new opportunity. So for you all who applied originally with the Office of Science, this is now everyone's first chance to get to apply within DOE's Office of Technology Commercialization. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we in OTC, we are leveraging ConnectWorks. Yeah, they are a partnership intermediary organization so that they can administer the SBIR as an STTR program. So ConnectWorks gets to do a lot of day-to-day administrative functions of the program, like outreach, managing the solicitation, running collaboration events, hosting webinars like this one. But all topics and selections are still at the direction of DOE as they've been in the past. We're just very excited to have this partner on board, ConnectWorks, to help make a lot of the administrative functions even more efficient and more slick. The website looks great. So that we at DOE can still focus on the technical mission and ensuring that our awardees are provided with sufficient support to have a successful project during the course of their project and beyond. So our move to ConnectWorks as our partner is not the only change in the program, and we've put together these circles that show some of the main changes in our program going forward. And you all, as Phase 2 or 2.2 applicants, you will start to see some of these immediately. Already, we're doing what we can to simplify the application. We've reduced the number of fields by a lot, so hopefully that's something that's appreciated as you go through the application process. We're moving towards broader, more open topics as well. For this phase 2 opportunity, of course, we're pretty locked into the prior topics that were posted a few years ago. But you see how on the website we've now reconfigured how those topics are arranged and what topics you'll be applying under in these broader topic areas. And then we're planning to provide closer project management support over the course of the award to all of our awardees. And so we're really looking forward to getting to work even closer with you so that we can help you reach your commercialization goals. And with that enhanced commercialization focus, we're planning to provide a number of other services over the course of an award, like easier to navigate TABA support, annual showcase and events, and a Phase 3 consortium. So this could be its own hour-long presentation. I do not have time for it. So this is, think of this like a little sneak preview of what's to come, but there is a lot of very exciting changes coming to your award. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so this is very important. Not all of our prior awardees are eligible for this Phase 2 opportunity. If you were eligible, you should have received an email from ConnectWorks letting you know that you are eligible. And there are 3 different opportunities that are now eligible for this Phase 2. One of the big ones is the FY24 Phase 1 Release 2. All of those awardees are now eligible for their first Phase 2 opportunity. Also, FY22 Phase 2 Release 2, a lot of twos, and the FY23 Phase 2 Release 2s are now eligible to apply for their next Phase 2. So those are Phase 2 awardees who are eligible to apply for their next Phase 2, which we're calling now a 2.2. One important note, there are a few awardees who fall under one of those old Phase 2 opportunities, but received the opportunity to apply for their Phase 2 last year in an FY25 announcement. Anyone who was already eligible to apply for their next round of Phase 2 is not eligible for this round. So in short, as long as you got that email from ConnectWorks, you are good to go. And if you're not sure about your status, just email sbir-sttr@connectworks.org, and they'll help you track down your award and figure out if you're eligible to apply for this round or perhaps a future round. And some of the opportunities listed there on the right who are eligible for the next round are listed. So we will be in touch with you at a future time when it is your turn. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, so a couple process details, a few steps to participate. As you probably have done, make sure to go to the FY25 Phase 2 opportunity page to read all about eligibility, evaluation, how to apply. Next, attend the virtual office hours on August 19th. You're all doing a great job at that one. Unless you're watching the recording, then, well, that's okay. You get partial credit. And then continue to gather materials for your application from the application checklist and make sure to get everything posted in the AMP application portal by September 25th at 12 p.m. So you have over a month, but don't delay because some of these things do take time, as you know, from your prior SBIR applications and awards. So make sure to be reading the checklist early so you can start gathering those materials, gathering letters of support, and all the required documentation so that you're ready to go by the September 25th deadline. Let's go on to the next slide, please. All right, a few sort of eligibility or rather SBIR and STTR requirements. These are unchanged from how they are in the past. These are all baked into the statute, so this shouldn't be too surprising. But for SBIR, the PI's primary employment must be with the small business. And primary employment means that you spend more than 50% of your employment hours with that small business. So that's really important. Um, Also, in terms of minimum level of effort for phase two, the small business must perform at least one half of the effort. You can't subcontract out more than a half of your total level of effort for for your award. And you can definitely partner for at less than a half level of subcontracting, but it is optional. And let's go to the next slide. I won't read all of it, but for STTRs, you're probably aware you must partner with a research institution, including a college or university, a nonprofit organization, or an FFRDC, which would be like a DOE national lab. And there are some additional minimum level of effort requirements and some nuances for STTR. I'm technically out of time, so I'll kind of breeze past those, but you can read those at your leisure and feel free to ask us or email the ConnectWorks box if you have questions about any of these specific requirements for STTR. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right, application checklist. So the good news is, while a lot has changed in the program, a lot of these requirements should look pretty similar to what you've seen in the past. You still have to submit a commercialization plan. You still have to submit a project narrative. New this time, though, is a pitch video. And so we have detailed guidance on what we're looking for out of your pitch video. But we're really excited to see what you come up with in terms of your video. And we're looking forward to watching your pitch. But that is a new important part of the application process. And as well, we're looking for CVs, current and pending support, your pro forma, references. Let's go on to the next slide and some additional requirements in the checklist, which I will not read all of, but you can read and make sure to look at all the different guides, examples, documents that we have posted so that you know what we're looking for and that you can submit everything by that 25th deadline. All right. One more set of application requirements are letters of commitment and support. Keep in mind that we do view letters of commitment, letters of funding commitment, and letters of support as different attachments and as different types of documents to your application. So just make sure you carefully read what we count as each of the three so that you're submitting the right, you're submitting your letters in the right category. But these are, of course, an important staple of many SBIR applications. All right, next slide, please. All right, and finally, evaluation criteria. So once you get in your application, the natural question always is, well, what comes next? And the answer is we evaluate. And so again, this shouldn't look too different from what you're used to in the past for SBIR application evaluation. We are still evaluating your technical promise. So is your technology feasible? Is your idea innovative? Is it significant? Does it not break the laws of thermodynamics? The good news is if you're here, it probably doesn't. So great job. But we look for all of that, right? Is your next round, your proof of concept, is it all feasible and significant? And then there's commercial potential. And this is perhaps more important than ever in our new commercialization focused program. And now we're looking for things like your value proposition, your competitive advantage, your go-to-market strategy, how well you're able to meet specific customer needs, assess your competitive landscape, and lay out a plan for how you're going to implement and go to market. And then finally, team qualifications. So do you have the team, the partners, the financials to actually execute on the project that you outline, both again on the technical and commercial axes, but do you have the team to do so? And so more is listed here, but just wanted to read through that at a fairly high level. And I believe with that, I will turn it over to AJ Ferrari to talk through some OIG requirements. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ben. A lot of what Ben covered is what we really care about. We just look at the enforcement angle of, being truthful in those applications and all the information you're giving to, the U.S. government as part of asking for funding and receiving funding. So real quick, I'll try to get through this, but the Inspector General Act of 1978, so for 50 years, OIGs have existed in order to ensure efficiency and economy of all the different agencies within the government. Essentially, that means we try to fight fraud, waste, and abuse. Within that, I am within the Office of Investigations, and I am one of a few dozen special agents within the Department of Energy. There are probably a couple hundred others with NASA, DCIS, NSF, et cetera, that do similar work, and we do investigations of criminal and civil statutes, see if people are violating them regarding fraud, false claims, bribery, kickbacks. And then we, as part of doing that, we can draft and serve IG subpoenas. So that can be subpoenas to your business, that can be subpoenas to banks. So it is something serious when you apply for federal government grants, that there are a lot of things that we can do in order to ensure that those funds are spent wisely within the law. Then we refer matters to DOJ if we, think that there's a civil or criminal nexus there. And then potentially there's even search and arrest warrants, and we work with those partners that I have listed. Next slide. And then, what we see with SBIR fraud. So things will be a little bit different with the change from cooperative agreements. So this is kind of focused backwards, but as we get up to speed, there are going to be similar things where, individuals may try to get funds that they aren't supposed to. So that could be duplicative proposals. Typically, you can do that if you inform DOE and NASA and whoever else you're applying for funding. You can say, hey, we really want to do this project, but if it's to multiple agencies, let us know, because if you get funding from two different agencies to do the same thing, that can be a big problem. Let's see, false statements. So again, if you say that you're under 501 employees and really you're, at 800 and you don't actually qualify, that would be a problem. The entire award could be damages against the government. Again, like ownership, if you're not owned by the specific percentage of US owners, if your affiliations are with big, even industry, whether it's an industry or institutes of higher education, if you are affiliated with those in certain ways and you don't qualify for the SBIR program and still apply and receive that funding, that's the stuff we look into. The PIs and the key personnel, if those individuals are not employed, those restrictions that, Ben talked about, that's the stuff that we look into. Whether they have enough time to do this or they're overcommitted, whether the current and pending support means that they're receiving funding from, sources that, we would look into, or if there's conflicts of interest. And if those PIs are in another country, then they can't perform the work here. So that's something we've seen a lot of. Let's see, falsities regarding the work to be performed. So, if you're actually going to be doing that work by, your employees, if it's actually going to be subcontracted, that can be a problem. And that definitely has to be done within the United States without going and saying, hey, am I allowed to do this particular part of the research in another country where the facilities are different? You need to talk to your contracting officer about that before that happens. And then obviously, buying stuff that you're not supposed to with the funds. I'm sure it'll be a little bit different with firm fixed price, but look into the rules for that, and submitting those false reports to get funding can be a really big deal. And so these are going to be false certifications a lot of times to us, Department of Energy, other funding agencies, or sam.gov. And so these are all places where we've seen false certifications, and it can cause problems. I do have a quick, the next slide has what our previous current and pending support certifications look like. I'm not sure if they're going to look exactly the same, but you can see it's a big block of text there. Make sure you are sure that all this is true when you are signing to this, because even if it's material omissions, you can open yourself up to those criminal and civil federal statutes. And then you are putting your name on the line saying, hey, I understand that this is all material. So each certifications will be a little bit different, but just make sure you're aware of those. And then the next slide, I think, yeah, so different things. These are, criminal and civil, violations. Like, we have sent people to prison. Judges have sentenced individuals to prison who have committed fraud for research fraud from the Department of Energy. There's also probation and other things. Civil False Claims Act can open up the company or individuals to triple damages. So if you receive, $100, you'd have to pay $300 back potentially. But also every single claim could be up to $11,000. So, reasons why, to make sure that you are not violating the Civil False Claims Act, which has a lower standard of proof where, you should have known something and you still ask for the money. Well, you could potentially be violating that. And one of the administrative remedies that we see, be really on the lookout for: suspension and debarment. If we find that you are not presently responsible and we refer this, the Department of Energy, NSF, NASA can decide that For the time being, you are not presently responsible to receive funding. For 3 years or even more, you could not be eligible to receive grant funds or contract funds. I think there's one more. So this is just an example. This is a case that I worked several years ago. I've sanitized it for the individuals involved and the companies involved, but this was an SBIR company that submitted for the same work multiple different applications using fake businesses in order to get the funding. You can see this is off of the Department of Justice's website. You search this, you will see those individuals' names. These are researchers who I'm sure are still out there working, but now when you Google their names, this can come up. And they also can be suspended, debarred, and pay back all the funds. And then the last slide is just a real quick how to report violations to us. Mandatory disclosures, typically in the contracts, it says if you know that one of your employees or the company has violated criminal civil law, then you need to report it to DOE, but also to us, the OIG specifically. And so we have our hotline right there if you do see something like that. And then also I want to put a pitch out there for key TAMs. If you do know, if you're working for a company or if you know of another company that is, violating the Civil False Claims Act, you can go through a key TAM whistleblower lawsuit. Typically, you find an attorney first and then would report it to the Department of Justice, and you yourself can receive those recovered funds up to 15 to 30%. So that was all for me, but thanks for the time. And if you do have any questions or you want something specific for your company or for an industry trade group, reach out to us and we can give another similar presentation that's a little more in depth. Thanks.
Okay, Ben or one of your team members, would you like to give an overview of the topics? We don't need to spend
Yes.
much time here today because they are on the application hub.
Yeah, you got it. So here are our 6 topic areas. As I mentioned earlier, these are a bit broader than they've been in the past. What we've done is we've grouped together some of the main priorities or main areas by grouping together the previous phase 1 or old phase 2 topic areas. So essentially, if you're on the call, you're eligible to apply, and you can just read each topic to see where does the old topic that I applied to 2 years ago, where does that fit in? And if you're coming with a phase 2 project already, applying for your phase 2.2, you can basically apply to whichever of these high-level topics fits your project best. We're still going to be making independent evaluations and decisions. So it's not that it doesn't matter which topic area you apply to, but you do have a little bit of flexibility to choose which one fits your project best. Again, if you're applying with a 2.2 application. For phase 1s applying for their phase 2s, it should be very clear which topic area you fit under. I don't think this slide is relevant, so I think we can continue moving on. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Ben. So my name is Kelsey Hamilton. I'm a project manager with ConnectWorks, and our next few slides are just going to go over the application process now that we are utilizing the AMP application portal. So this is our application portal. Currently, the applications for phase 2 are not yet open, but we encourage you to use this website to register to request access to AMP so you're ready to go. This link will bring you to this AMP access request form. Please make sure you are using an individual email address, not a company email address when you sign up. We need that for security reasons, and you should be selecting the SBIR STTR option for program. I'll just note that the AMP application portal is used for other ATI consortiums. You do not need to be a member of an ATI consortium to access AMP and to access this application. Next slide, please. So if you have already requested access for AMP, great. If not, I encourage you to do so as soon as you get off this webinar, because we do plan to open the portal for submissions tomorrow. We'll send out an email to the group as soon as that happens. And we also now have a helpful resource guide on the application hub we can link in the chat as well. But currently, if you go in there tonight, this is what it will look like. Welcome to the portal, and there will be either no open solicitations, or perhaps you might see the phase 1 solicitation that we opened last week. But rest assured, the FY25 phase 2 application will show up there tomorrow. Next slide. Yes, and it will look a little bit like this when it does. It would just say phase 2. A key option I wanted to point out here is the to-do list will read as 0 items pending until you start your first draft submission. In terms of submissions, we encourage you to start your draft, save. You can even submit, but then re-edit your submission up until the deadline. And as you are going in your application, we encourage you to do so because one thing we cannot do is after 12 noon on the 25th, we will not be able to review any solicitations that were still in draft. We will only be able to review ones that were submitted. So make sure you don't wait until the last minute to do that. All right, next slide. Just a final reminder before we get into Q&A, there will be a post-webinar survey, and we would be very thankful if you fill it out, as it will help us estimate how many of you plan to respond to this opportunity, as well as to let us know your thoughts about how we're doing in this new format. Okay. Now what everyone is waiting for Q&A, we will be using the tool Vivox. So you can either take out your smartphones and scan this QR code, or we'll drop a link in the chat. This will bring up a tool. Feel free to submit your questions. Please review the published questions first to see if someone's already asked your question. You will have the ability to upvote questions you want answered, and they'll rise to the top. So we can kind of crowdsource the ones I'm able to get to with our limited time. Next slide. All right. And if you don't see your question you submitted on the board, that just means one of our reviewers determined it likely fell into one of these 2 criteria. So today we want to prioritize questions that are novel, not answered somewhere in the FAQs or resources on the website, just to make the most of our time. And we also will not be answering questions about phase 1 or future opportunities today. So please do try to keep those questions on topic and use those thumbs up to push the ones you care about up to the top. All right. And they're starting to trickle in. Thank you, guys. And let's see.
Hi, Kelsey.
Oh, hi, Eileen.
Can I say something while you all are waiting?
Sure.
There was a slide on the NERSC high performance scientific computing facility at DOE. Just a reminder for those awardees who have computationally intensive projects, you do have access to DOE's scientific computing facility by applying. Once you're an awardee, you would apply for time on our computers, and that information is on one of the prior slides. So just wanted to mention that.
Great. Okay. So I see we are already getting questions about budget. Ben, could you maybe give us an overview of how this PIA opportunity is different from the NOFO FOA that everyone's used to? Or if Felipe's on, maybe he can help as well.
Yeah, I may even ask Felipe or Sarah on the team. They probably have the best words to describe it.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So these agreements are handled a little bit differently from grants or cooperative agreements in that they're paid based on milestone-based payments. So what you'll see in the project narrative template is there will be a table at the end of it for your work plan that will go through the specific, budget you need to accomplish certain major tasks and goals throughout the project. And so what that total budget should be, equal to or less to 2 million over 2 years, plus the addition of TABA if you're also planning to use those funds. So 2,050,000.
Okay. All right. Will multiple people from our organization be able to access the applications? So I can take this one. You will need to register within the AMP portal and that system as a single entity, and that person is responsible for submitting the application. So if you are going to work as a team to put together an application, we suggest that you do that offline, and then one person will be responsible for submitting everything in its entirety. To help you do that, I would recommend that you navigate to that opportunity page and pull down that checklist resource, which would have everything you need to get ready for the application itself, including links to all of the templates and resource guides and important definitions on what all of those components are. So that's a great tool that is already up on the application even before the solicitation opens in the portal tomorrow, that you can start working from. Are all phase 2 applications for $2 million across all topics?
Yes, that is the maximum award size for this whole phase 2 opportunity for each application.
It is a following question to that, Ben. Are people defining their budget up until 2 million, or is that just one flat rate that everybody will receive?
You would define your budget. If you want to propose a $1 million project, you may. $1.5 million, you may. 2 million, it's sort of up to you and what your needs are. But it's not a flat rate necessarily.
All right. Okay. How many letters of support are allowed? It was limited to 5 in the last phase 2. I can speak to what the application will physically allow, which is a single PDF where you should collate or coalesce all of these letters of support. But I would turn to Ben or one of the DOE members here to speak to if there is a limit.
Yeah, we do not have a limit for the number of letters of support.
Okay, but they should be collated into one single PDF and uploaded as a single document. So please remember to do that. All right. What is a period of performance for these phase 2 projects?
So the award length would be up to 2 years. And perhaps Sarah or Felipe can speak a little bit to how the milestones fit into the period of performance and what an award looks like.
Yeah, so we expect most of these awards to finish their work in 2 years. However, if, there will be no-go periods at the end of those 2 years to decide if you get, a second phase 2, if this is your first phase 2. And also because these are milestone-based payments, they're paid out on the schedule that you complete the invoiceable work. So for example, you don't have to invoice on a particular schedule. We have like an estimated schedule based on when we expect certain work to be done. But for example, if you finish a few weeks early on a particular milestone, you can then invoice for that milestone a couple weeks early.
Can a milestone be modified in mid-performance if early technical results change in a project's direction?
Yeah, so that's exactly the kind of flexibility that this new structure allows for. So if things change or you meet a milestone early, you would get to work with your program manager at DOE and ConnectWorks to make sure that the milestones are properly tracking the course of your project for however long it takes.
Is it required that while narrating the video pitch, speakers need to be visible on video?
That is stated, I forget exactly where we landed on that, but it is stated clearly in the video requirements guide in the application checklist. So as long as your video meets the requirements as outlined in the application checklist, then you've met that requirement.
Thank you, Ben. All right, I see we've gotten a couple questions about what can change from your phase 1 award to your phase 2. And I believe someone had typed an answer below, but Ben, correct me. What we had gone with is that you are able to change the name of your project or even some of the team members associated with your project from phase 1 to phase 2. And all of this new information should be updated as it's included in your phase 2 application.
Yeah, definitely. So phase 1, much smaller scale award. And for many, this was a year ago, more than a year ago that I know that you finished. So things change, partners change, even titles change. And we want to see the best scope and the best team that you can put together for your phase 2 in this new opportunity. So we're open to things changing. We just want to see you propose your best ideas.
Right. Okay. Is there a maximum amount of funding that subrecipients can receive?
So as long as you meet the minimum level of effort requirements that I spoke about briefly, then there are no other sort of specific requirements, but there is that 50%. So 50% of the effort of the award has to be done by the small business for an SBIR award. And that would probably be the main limit as we think about how much you can put towards subcontractors.
Okay. Is cost share required for these proposals?
Not for this opportunity, no. No cost share is required.
Okay. I do see a question about the video pitch. Is it replacing a letter of intent? In other words, is it acting as a gateway prior to the full proposal?
The letters of intent from the past and these video pitches have pretty different intents. So the old letters of intent were a stage gate. You would submit your letter of intent, we would review the letter of intent, and then we would either encourage or discourage you to submit a full application. But for this phase 2, you've all had now phase 1 projects. We expect that everyone would probably be encouraged to at least apply to phase 2. So the video pitch is one more application requirement that we will evaluate alongside all parts of your application to determine if you are given an award.
Okay. Will the deliverables and milestones in the project narrative be the only priced or billable deliverables? Are more frequent standard deliverables, for example, a quarterly or monthly report, possible? From a cash flow perspective, more frequent payments are useful.
Yeah, I may pivot over to Sarah to talk through, or Felipe to talk through milestones.
Yeah, we're still finalizing what these agreements will look like, but we are looking at something similar to like a quarterly payment structure, and there will be an initial payment at the start of the award so that you have some seed funding to actually get work going, sign your subcontractors and tablet providers, and get started. And there will be these sort of stage gates on a quarterly basis and a yearly basis between the 2 years of the award.
Okay.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Eileen.
No, I just want to clarify, in this funding opportunity, there's first phase 2s, there's second phase 2s, and then there are some awardees that have a second phase 2 and are eligible to apply for a third phase 2 award, which is 2C. And those would be fiscal year 23, phase 2, release 2 awardees from the old opportunity. Those applications do require cost sharing, just so you know. They do require 50% cost sharing, and there are very specific cost sharing requirements associated with them. If you have additional questions about that, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Eileen. Apologies for missing that. But that is stated within each topic language. There's sort of an additional paragraph, and that is stated in that paragraph. So just make sure to read that closely.
Yes, and while you are using the application to try to help you through that, there will be a question where you have to identify the prior solicitation for your most recent award that you're moving on from. And if, for example, matching funds are required for that third phase 2 award, that becomes a required upload, whereas for others it would be only optional. So we did try to build the application in a way to help, but if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to SBIR/STTR@connectworks.org, and we can get you an answer. And if we don't know it ourselves, we will find the people who do. All right. I did see a question that's worth mentioning. If you had previously been an SBIR project or an STTR project, you are able to switch to one or the other for phase 2, for your new phase 2 application. Please just view the eligibility and requirements page on the application hub, and in your application, you will be able to select to apply to SBIR, STTR, or both, provided you meet those requirements. Will reviewers have access to prior phase reporting, or should we include a summary of the prior efforts in our technical narrative?
You should include some baseline description of your prior phase work complete.
Okay. For commercialization milestones, what does DOE consider an appropriate business or commercialization milestone for a phase 2.2 project? How should they relate to the technical milestones in the project narrative and the longer-term milestone-driven development roadmap in the commercialization plan?
Yeah, that is a great question. I don't know if Sarah, you might have a better answer to that about setting out those milestones ahead of time.
Yeah, I think Eileen can speak to 2.2 awards in particular, but commercialization milestones can be, things from customer discovery to meetings with potential investors, market size, refining, things like that. Eileen, I don't know if you have any other ideas for what can be some good milestones for commercialization.
No, I think that was a good response, Sarah. I don't have a lot to add, but these are going to be steps that you're taking towards weaning yourself off of SBIR, STTR funding and moving into phase 3, which is non-SBIR funding, whether it's preparing your pitch deck, going to, conferences and meeting customers, customer discovery, demonstration plans, and that kind of thing. So things that are helping you pivot towards having your own customers or investors. And along in the second phase 2 award, you should be further along than you are in your first phase 2 in terms of your milestones and your terms of the development of your technology and being ready for commercialization. Hopefully that makes sense.
All right. For phase 2.2 applicants that would have previously pursued a 2A award, how explicitly should our application distinguish between work needed to complete or refine the phase 2 prototype versus additional R&D needed to move towards commercialization?
Yeah, the prior 2A and 2B had that distinction, and then we're not distinguishing now with the 2.2. It's a second phase 2 award. So you really just need to focus in your application on what it is that you are working on, whether it is more research and development, because there were certain things about your phase 2 award that need to kind of they change direction or something like that, or more testing or research that needs to be done, or you are doing more work specifically around commercializing your technology. Just explain in your application what it is and why you need the second phase 2 award. We're not distinguishing so much between those two cases anymore.
Thanks, Eileen. As a follow-up, are there any recommended or required TRL levels or tech readiness levels for these phase 2 applications?
I don't think we've explicitly laid out TRLs. We recognize that across the different topic areas and the different projects that are out there, we might see a pretty wide range of starting and ending TRLs. We just want to see significant development and significant steps towards commercialization. And then we'll work with you to define your starting and goal ending TRLs.
Since letters of support are encouraged but not required, what types are most valuable? So, for example, prospective customers, pilot partners, industry partners, or SMEs?
I would say that you need to include letters of support that are appropriate for your level of development. So early in phase 2, you might want to have potential customers who are willing to test your technology, or subject matter experts who talk about the need for what it is that you're doing. But later on in phase 2 or the second phase 2, it will be more important to show commercialization pathways, or what we call phase 3 pathways. So it depends on where you are sort of in your technology development. Certain supporters are more important in different phases of development.
All right, thank you. Can you clarify any sub-awardee requirements? Do they require their own budget justification or project narrative?
While sub-awardees don't require their own separate project narrative or budget justification, you should be addressing in your project narrative and work plan how you're planning to utilize some subcontracts and sort of what proportion of work they're going to be doing.
Who are the technical reviewers for phase 2 applications? Will they be DOE programs that overlap with the technical area as they were before?
Yeah, so we are lucky to get to pull from such a great knowledge base within DOE, as well as qualified expert external reviewers as well. For every reviewer, we make sure that there's no conflict of interest between themselves and the application that they are reviewing, so that we can have a independent merit review for every single application, so that we can get back these scores to make those final decisions.
So the webpage mentions TABA, but no instructions on how and when to submit a TABA proposal. I can speak to the application itself. The only question in the application regarding TABA is whether or not you are interested in receiving TABA. Maybe Ben or Sarah, you can speak to what more would be required after the application is submitted.
I'll bump it over to Sarah, who I think has the best handle on this one.
Yeah, so similarly, in your project narrative, you should be describing what you plan to use your TABA for, so what types of services you're interested in. And then OTC is also partnering with the Foundation for Energy Security and Innovation for recommending TABA providers to SBI or STTR authorities. So more on that to come.
Okay. Since the award will be firm fixed price and indirect rates are not applicable, what information is needed in support of a budget since labor rates are burdened? Or more
Right.
generally, we could use the related question of, can you explain how the milestone-based question or reimbursement will work? I think there's still some confusion around moving towards these milestone-based payments that are defined in the project narrative.
Yeah, so for the milestone-based payments, you're basically saying, we are planning on, developing this technology and we have these different stage gates that we're trying to hit. For each milestone, you don't need to define, you know, all the labor required to get to that step, all the equipment you have to purchase. We're just trying to see, you know, in order to get to this step, this is how much funding is required. And then you're justifying that, saying like, hey, we have to buy this equipment by this time. We have to, you know, work with these staff members. And you're telling the story of how you're trying to get this project off the ground. So it's not as detailed as these prior budget forms you may have had to fill out for your phase one. It's really, you know, separating things into discrete overarching tasks and what funding is needed to get you to that.
A useful follow-up question, Sarah, might be when thinking about how to propose the budget, is there any restriction, or can you have a year one budget of say 700K and a year two budget of 1.3 million?
I think you can propose, you know, if you make a justification for why you need the budget split a certain way in your work plan proposal. But generally, you know, we're obviously not going to award all of it up front and none of it the second year. So, you know, I think there can be some shuffling around, but you do have to, you know, award.
Okay. Is there an RFP, or is the ConnectWorks portal the only document to guide proposers? So this is it. It's the application hub, and that is probably a question based on how things used to be. But since moving to the PIA, ConnectWorks is functioning as the PI, and we've put together this application hub. If you are not able to find an answer to a question you have, please just reach out, and we'll make sure we can get that answer for you.
Hey, Kelsey, actually, I want to clarify one of my answers from
Sure.
a little while ago. I think another question we got too about the video pitch requirements and if you have to be visible. So what we state is that you can record your video of the presenter physically next to or in front of the slides, or record the presentation where your video box is visible. So in some way, we do have to see your face. You do have to you know, show you speaking, but you do have a little bit of flexibility with how you do that.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben, because as someone who's doing this right now, I do hate having my face on video, so y'all get to suffer with me. So, you know, thank you, Ben. All right, one question. What should we use for a start date?
It's a great question. Grayson or Sarah, do you have any clarity?
A good start date, I think, should be, I would say, 3 months after the applications close. So I would say like December or January. But you know, in your proposal, the start date doesn't necessarily matter. It can be, you know, notice to proceed. It's more just like, you know, how many months after your start date does each milestone occur?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
previously we've structured agreements in a way where if milestone 1 happens at N and milestone 2 is at N plus 6 months or something like that. So would something like that be acceptable, Sarah?
Yeah, just I don't know if we lost Sarah, just jumping in because I know we've had a lot of questions around that. So I think what I'm hearing is for planning purposes, again, we're not stating today when reviews will be completed, when selections will go out, when they'll be notified. But for planning, when you're setting up your project, as a best practice and your schedule, you can use start date plus 1 month, plus 2 months, or whatever your sequence of your timeline would be. And then for the group, I think it's fair to use, say, the beginning of the new year as a start date if you're being asked or have questions. Ben, Eileen, Sarah, please jump in if that's not a fair recap. And Kelsey, after that, I'll turn it over to you as we're almost out of time.
Yeah. Oops. I was gonna say we are almost at time, and I do think I saw one question that I definitely want to give an answer to. So we've been working really hard. We have over 250 questions that were submitted. So anything we were not able to get to during this Q&A session, we will be working offline to produce a Q&A resource. We'll be posting answers to all of the questions that were asked today. So we'll get a transcript of the ones that we were able to ask and answer live, but we also will be working to fill in answers to any of the ones that were unpublished. So appreciate your patience there. Again, I think these numbers just speak to the overall excitement about this opportunity, and we're thrilled to have as many of you here joining us today.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And we look forward to answering the rest of your questions and meeting you at future events and webinars like this one.